The Week in Bible Prophecy, a Prophecy Watchers podcast.
Elon Musk just decided that he's connected with PayPal, right, originally, and he wants to create within Twitter a PayPal type purchasing system. So here you have the technology that he understands as well as the base of creating these digital exchanges, which I find fascinating, where again, you go to China today, most of the places they're already cashless and they already have the exchange, the Alibaba app and the Alipay and these other companies, they're already there. So here you have a guy like Elon Musk who has the ability, the creative genius, and the willingness to put himself out there for increase. It's going to bring it into really the West.
Yeah, I think one of the models that we can look at, and this is just something I learned about this week, as it's been announced, is the Digital for Freedom initiative that's going to be going on in the Ukraine. Already, Zelensky is anticipating his victory thanks to the West's support over Russia. And then he's invited all these major companies like BlackRock and Goldman Sachs and tech companies to come in and rebuild the country. There's a commercial you can see on YouTube that talks about the future of Ukraine being a representative to the world. After they're done rebuilding it, it's because they're going to rebuild it without cash. It's going to use central bank digital currencies. They're going to initiate the China's social credit system and many other things that make life easy. And all that sounds all wonderful in the right hands. And when we see Ukraine built back better, so much better, right? Then the whole world should look at that and model it and do the same. And it's the whole World Economic Forum, one world government. We know that the Bible in Ephesians tells us that principalities and powers, satanic powers, are behind these things. And so what's the end time goal? It always goes back to what Isaiah showed us, that Satan wants the world to worship him. He wants those created in God's image to worship him. He's been working at it for thousands of years. In the tribulation, he'll get it at least for 3.5 years. Yeah. And how do you do that? Well, you work through these power brokers and influencers, whether Elon Musk is one or not. I don't know. I mean, as the richest man in the world right now, who for Halloween wore a behemoth costume and a upside down cross on him, he's not the friend that we think he is.
No.
But certainly you wrote this article I'm looking forward to read in your magazine about the tech oligarchs, possibly in the 10 kings. One will rise up and overthrow 3 of them. Will he not be a governmental ruler like Nicolae Carpathia of Romania or one of those figures? Maybe he'll be a technocrat. I can't imagine Mark Zuckerberg ruling the world, but people, it could be someone we don't know yet who will technologies come and go, and very well this technology could rise and we could have a technocrat over the world. I was talking with Gary Stearman today about his belief of how the youth worship technology. Yeah. Well, they're going to actually worship an image of the beast, a technological representation of the Antichrist in the end times. It's not a stone's throw from now to then.
And they're going to think it's cool. I mean, when you, I feel bad for, again, either my daughters or my grandson generation, because they've been raised on a phone in their hand or a screen in front of their face their entire life. And so you watch some of this, and let's go back to the digital currency aspect of it and the technology, because again, Revelation 13, we based on the ability to control and to program, like, again, these digital currencies, whether it's on blockchain, using crypto, there's a lot of investment by these banks in the crypto technology and the blockchain technology. But I think that's even problematic, because when we talk about a central bank digital currency, by definition, it's open, versus the blockchain technology is decentralized. So, but nevertheless, when we see the payment systems that are coming to be cashless, whether it's through a PayPal type system, again, I would say this about the West. The West is already behind China. There's a book that I just read recently called The Cashless Revolution. It goes through all of what China's been doing, and it just came out.
Oh, the digital yuan?
Well, even more than that. Way more than that. It came out in October, this book, but they were describing the ways in which we are so behind the times. And one of the ways that we're behind is because in the West, we have credit cards. Well, what people don't realize, I never realized this, that for the past 30 years, China, they never have credit cards.
Interesting.
Okay. And the reason why is because the fees were so high. Where in the West, that was just kind of the system. Well, when you don't have credit cards to manage your digital transactions, again, I don't carry cash with me ever. But for them, really about 2012, they started coming with the apps on the phones.
Well, they had to at that time period. Only 10% of China was connected on the internet. Then a few years later, it was about 33%. So we're seeing a meteoric rise. The stats for 2020, 3 years ago, was at 54% of all Chinese people had access to the internet. It's 3 years later, it's probably in the 60s or so.
And how many people is that?
Yeah, we're talking about 1.3 billion people.
Times 60%.
So they couldn't possibly have gone to a cashless system even a few years ago. And I think when we talked earlier in another podcast about connecting the world with satellites and stuff and connecting people in tribes like the Andes and out in the middle of Africa and stuff like that, well, you connected everybody also financially. And when you control their finances, you control their futures. We saw that with Justin Trudeau, the prime minister in Canada, when he shut off the truckers' protest by shutting off their finances. And he basically signs it. We've seen the West shut down Vladimir Putin by cutting him off from the global economic society. He's only staying afloat because China and India are purchasing from him. And so we see that. And if we read in Revelation chapter 13, verse 6, he says, he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or their foreheads, and that no one who do this may be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. We are living in a time period where we're seeing people being silenced to disagree with government by shutting off their finances. Imagine, Mondo, if everybody is cashless, we're all dependent on the banks, and the government tells the bank, close their system. Don't let them use PayPal. Don't lose them Apple Pay, whatnot. You've cut people off from society. And we read that in the Bible. Now, I'm not saying that we're at the mark of the beast system yet,
definitely not.
But we have the technology for it.
And we have precedent because I think one of the interesting thing is for those that are on food stamps or whatever, right? They get their little card. They go into the store, they go to buy something, and maybe they want to buy cigarettes or alcohol, and it's pre-programmable. You're not allowed to buy that stuff, which I think that's great, that they wouldn't, take, government subsidies to buy those things. But it shows you in advance that the capability to pre-program what you are allowed to purchase is already here.
Absolutely.
And if you just expand it out even more as the technology becomes more sophisticated. So one of the things that I'm watching for is this China-like system that's been put in place for the last 10 years for 500, 700 million people already there. Again, there's societies in China where you walk in, you can't even use the yuan as a cash. It's all 100%. I mean, I'm talking these cities are 100% digital already. So we're behind it. But as things like, again, what Elon Musk wants to do through Twitter, it's going to become more and more, and it's going to move away from they're going to have to change the credit cards technology into more of an app system, which we see this with Apple Pay and other things.
Yeah, the CBDs, central bank digital currencies. That's amount. They're going to need a better name for that to brand it. But the central bank digital currencies are clearly a way. Again, it puts the banks in, because what do the banks want? They want a part of every transaction.
Absolutely.
They don't get that with cash. And so the banks are enormously wealthy thanks to basically a tax on everything we buy. You're seeing, at least in certain countries, like for the last few years, Sweden has promised in 2023, this year, that they would go totally cashless. Now, they're not all following as fast as they want to, but the goal is by 2030, which interesting is the World Economic Forum's date,
isn't it?
Wants the world to be in a cashless system. Why? Because you can control people if you control their money.
Yep. And this is why, we'll end it here, at least this podcast. This is why we believe we're in the end times. This is the end of the age.
Absolutely.
We know it's been the last times since Jesus left, but this is the end of the age. And Jesus uses that phraseology in the Olivet Discourse. And so here we are, and we see Revelation 13 and other passages, and we see the technology, not only with phones, but with satellite systems, and as you mentioned, communications.